Welcome to episode 4 of Meeting You There. We are talking today about transformation. It's open hearts. We value transformation. Each person is a work in progress. When we open our hearts to God, we open our lives to transformation. God is never finished with any of us and is always nudging us toward well-being and growth for the sake of the whole world. Well, I am excited to be here, and my guest today is Christy Harlan, and I met Christy just under 5 years ago, which I know because it was right after I started at Shepherd of the Lake, and it was right after a worship service, I think. Christy came up to me and introduced herself to me and said, "Is there a daytime women's Bible study?" And I said, "No, you want to start one with me?" And she said, "Sure," and we did, and we've been meeting almost every Thursday for the last few years. To study the Bible, and it's been a lot of fun, and I'm just thrilled to be talking with Christy today. So welcome, Christy.
Thanks, Laila.
Yeah, and transformation is kind of a big, like, $2 word, right, for change. And so my question is there a time when you underwent a change, like either major or subtle, that you can think of, that caused you to like shift your perspective or maybe move through the world differently?
I can't really think of like a specific incident, like a really life-changing or altering one, but I think that when I look back on who I was 20 years ago or 10 years ago or 5 years ago, I've made, changes and transformations along the way. And I definitely feel like I'm in a bigger transformation or a bigger process now. Obviously with COVID and the unrest we've seen, I've really reached out for resources and that type of thing to help me get through it. And some of those have been very challenging for me, challenged my thought process, challenged who I've always been and who my values were. And maybe even who I was raised by, and seeing how those have influenced who I was, where I want to be. And I just am hearing the message very loud and clear that everything, in my opinion, everything comes down to deep, loving relationship with God and loving relationship with neighbor. And I am definitely not there. So in the process of transformation, let's say.
Yeah, well, I just absolutely love this. Thank you for that. I absolutely love this last piece of this value statement that says God's never finished with any of us and is always nudging us toward well-being and growth for the sake of the whole world. And I think you just expressed that in a nutshell. And so would you be comfortable saying more about maybe if there was a moment when you realized, like, oh, I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago or 20 years ago, and how does that make you feel to know that you're on a path of transformation?
Yeah. So I think that last year I went through a very painful part of my professional life, and that really brought me to my knees, which was good for me and something that I needed. And I became very dependent on really searching through the Bible and having more what I would call conversation than prayer with God. Why am I this way? Why can't I see this? Help point me in the direction. And while that pain is still there, I came out of that looking at ways that I could be different and handle things differently, but also be thankful and grateful for what did occur and how I did handle certain things. So I guess lessons learned, right? That worked, that didn't work. But it really, I think the bottom line for me was, wow, things work so much better for me when I'm in relationship with God. And as you just said in the last part, which I can't remember exactly how you said it, but when I read that too, when you emailed me that, God is constantly providing opportunities for us to move and transform. yeah, I think last year I was like, yep, I see that, and I'm just going to keep moving. And then never saw COVID, never saw that with another Black man's killing, we might actually finally start having tough conversations, so I never saw that coming, but here we are. So yeah, I think there's constantly opportunity, and I'm grateful for that, even though often it's painful and challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for naming that. I vividly remember having actual physical growing pains when I was a kid, and just waking up in the middle of the night and my legs were just like killing me, right? And going to my parents and just crying and saying, what is this and what can I do? And they would say, it's growing pains and it'll pass. And thank you for naming the pains that we experience when, and the discomfort, right? There's the general discomfort of being transformed. And I feel the same way sometimes, like when I'm experiencing spiritual growth, or when I know I have like spiritual work in front of me, like I'm like, okay, come on, God. Am I like, can't we just be good for now? Like, I thought I was doing all right, right? Like, right. I thought I was doing all right. Like, I do not want to have to do this work right now. It's because it is hard, and sometimes it's painful and it's uncomfortable. And it's like, I know from experience. And I know from entering into the stories of all, the biblical characters and the stories of people like you I talked to, that, when we move through these periods of transformation, we move through the difficult work of transforming. I know I always come out the other side more integrated, more whole, like more connected to God than I ever was or ever knew I could be. And I'm still like, like, like as my kids would say when they were little, no, thank you. No, thank you. I don't want to have to grow spiritually.
I think that's a great point. I think maybe that's one of the things that I could pinpoint to is last year. I mean, I always logically knew that that in the end it would be okay and it would be better. And once you got through that kiln the fire, your clay pot is better or different. But last year, really, I finally, there were multiple little things that I can, when I get down, or I say, nope, not doing this again. You already did me. I can say, wow, I can now actually have that physical feeling of how it felt with, oh yeah, it is okay. Oh yeah, God is here. It's okay. I used to joke when I was younger, well, what does God want me to do with my life? What is my, spiritual gift that goes into the body? And I need a big billboard. Yeah. And now finally I'm like, oh, I didn't need a big billboard. I just needed these little things. And I would say that is probably my biggest growth in the 20 years I've been working on it. But yeah, last year, finally I got it. It was like, oh, not only is it logical, it's in the heart now too.
Yeah. Yeah. So those little things. So paying attention to those little things and the whispers maybe, or the nudges, or yeah. Like where is God nudging us instead of like, I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself, but when I was a kid, we didn't have the Google, and we would get these like triptychs from AAA, which is this map that you'd flip over, and it would, the travel agent would take out the old school highlighter and highlight the route that you're supposed to take, right? Like, so maybe it's not about God handing us the triptych of our lives, right? I'm saying, follow the yellow brick road, or follow this highlighted line, but, remember that I'm walking alongside you, right? So,
and how fun is it? Like, you think back to vacations or trips or whatever, and detoured, didn't follow the map, didn't Google it, whatever, and you're ended up in just a crazy or fun or a very interesting experience that you wouldn't have done. And so, yeah, good way to look at it, I think.
Yeah. we talk about the theology of the cross, which is understanding that God is present in, I mean, there are volumes and volumes and volumes written about it, right? So I'm going to not do it justice by, which is this one little snippet. There you go. There is the theology of the cross. But one piece of it is understanding that God is in the midst of the suffering. And it sounds to me like you were able to maintain some sense of that when you were walking through some difficult things last year. You said that was a difficult year for you. Were there certain practices that you had, or were there certain things that you can remember that helped you remember that God was there in the midst of that with you, and that you would in fact come out the other side stronger, transformed, more integrated, more whole?
Yeah, I don't know that I thought that doing it would get me there, but certainly it did. And it's going to sound really silly, but it was actually putting into practice what I had heard 1,000 times: set aside some quiet time with a meditation or a Bible or whatever, prayer book, whatever would be good for you. Long walks in nature, duh. I was 40-some years old and had heard that so much and just never really made that a priority. And I finally was forced to, basically, because I was on my knees. I was in the pit. And it was like, oh, wow, this really does work. So, and then I know that when the pandemic started, a friend of mine sent me the Richard Rohr meditation series. It was late March, early April, and I just made that a priority every morning. It was that and Christ in our home, and when I was on walks, making sure I was looking around and being grateful or thankful or looking for beauty around me and normalcy, because nature when we were at stay at home, nature wasn't staying at home. They were still doing their life. So, and just a couple of weeks ago, I started down again, and Lee said to me, "You don't seeing yourself. Are you okay?" And I was like, I don't feel myself. What's going on? And I stepped back and I was like, wow, I've gotten away from those things that were good for me. And I just started those back up a couple of days ago, and it's amazing how much better I feel on this Monday than I did last Monday.
Yeah.
So, duh.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I often, I often will think like, oh yeah, that's right, God, right? Like, okay, like, oh, and I'll talk to a friend about it, or, whatever. And like, oh, well, have you prayed about it? I'm like, I'm sorry, what? Right? What are you doing to take care of yourself? I'm sorry, what? So I think it's normal. Well, I hope it's normal anyway, to kind of fall away from those practices and forget just how life-giving they are, really, those spiritual practices that work for us. And it's not a one-size-fits-all thing, right? We have to find the things that feed us, and that will change over time as well, depending on the seasons of our lives. I walked in the grass barefoot. I set my timer this morning. I said, I'm going to walk in the grass barefoot, just like stomp around my yard for 5 minutes, just to feel the grass on my feet. And it was amazing because it worked. You're right. It's like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. We can just take these little snippets of time to really connect and do what we know will feed our soul. So, yeah.
5 minutes, right? So great.
Right. And sometimes it's hard to even stick to that 5 minutes, right? I put the 5-minute timer on so that I wouldn't bail on myself early and go, well, that's enough time.
No, I hear you. Yeah.
Well, I am incredibly grateful for the opportunity to talk with you today, Christy. I'm incredibly grateful that your path of transformation and my path of transformation, that God has us hanging out together these days. And I just want to say thank you. And I'm also going to put a plug in, because I can put a plug in for our women's Thursday morning Bible study at 10 a.m. on Thursdays. I believe we'll have some iteration of that beginning in the fall, and we don't know what we're doing yet, but it's going to be cool. So you should join us.
Right. I agree. And, transformative for sure. It's a very different Bible study than I think most people are used to. And we go down some paths that are very different. And I think if people are looking for a different way to do Bible study, we're it.
Yeah. But it's not like Minnesota different. Like, how was the lasagna? It was different.
It's different in a good way.
In a good way.
It's no homework. It's no pressure. It's open minds, open hearts, open table for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful for this. I think the series is a great idea, and I hope that it brings blessings to everyone who gets an opportunity to hear it.
Thank you. Well, let's all remember that we're all works in progress, and give thanks to our beautiful, life-giving God who walks through everything life brings us to with us. So, all right. Thanks so much, Christy. And we will see everyone next time.